I do have to make one claim for obscurity. I have to make a claim for obscurity because lots of the things I do with my colleagues and other people I work with are doing things for very small audiences and very small publishing houses and very small bits of poetry, bits of performance, and be seen by very few people. And I think that's important as well. That's an injection under the skin.
Yes, I think that's true.
And sometimes it's just, you know, because we're doing the big stuff, the other stuff kind of forgotten. It's so important that those things are occurring. But they are occurring more and more now.
Yeah.
And COVID, the Brexit, has actually encouraged it.
I think so. I think so. You know. Yeah,
we've got an enormous number of questions, so I'm going to go to. We won't get through them all, so I apologise to people out there because there is basically when it turns out you're having a discussion about the nature of human imagination, where it comes from, where it goes, and what can it do. It turns out that 47 minutes isn't enough to cover that all. Looking back, we haven't thought this ahead. This is Stacey. Now, I'll ask this to you, Brian, because this is something you kind of dealt with a little bit. Stacey's wondering, often people talk about a drought of ideas where imagination fails. But what when there's too much and your imagination runs wild with too many wonderful things? What do you do to capture it and try not to miss a thing?
You don't capture it. You go for the best one. You sleep on it and see which one rises to the surface in the quag of sleep. And go for that, because that's probably the one that needs to speak to you the most.
I would say that there's no reason. Yes, choose the one that is the best and the most appealing, but don't necessarily discard the others. That might be another book or an idea at some point in the future that can be something else. It's yeah, have a commonplace book, write these things down, choose the best one, and but the others might come in very useful at some point.
Indeed.
I just want to add to that. I was just interested because sometimes you can come up with an idea and it just doesn't work at all.
Yeah.
And then 12 years later, you find it in a notebook and it seems to be only a change of a word or two, or what barely even seems to be a change of approach, and something which seemed utterly dead in 2010 or whatever, you go, oh, now my mind is able to turn this into something. I mean, is that something else as well about in terms of ideas that can sometimes get lost or seem pointless?
In the notebook.
Yeah.
Well, and also those... I'd have to get a plug in here for Brian Eno and Peter Schmidt's oblique strategies cards. They won't be useful all of the time, but this is a bunch of cards that have got often cryptic instructions on them. And if you're in a rut in your thinking with a creative work, you look at one of these cards and you try to obey the instructions so that you'll at least be in a different rut. And sometimes you can have ideas that they don't quite work. They sound like a good idea, but they don't quite work. And I remember when I was working on the Big Numbers comic that was aborted after 2 issues, but when I was working upon that, I'd got this scene which should have worked brilliantly, and it wouldn't work. And I just picked up one of the oblique strategies cards and it said, is there something missing? And I thought, well, of course there's not. This is all the elements of the scene. And then I thought, well, what if there was? So I just thought up a completely random element that made the scene work perfectly.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
So sometimes there might be something missing, you know.
Can I come into that?
Yes.
When teaching, and sometimes I had a student who would say, "Oh, but I can't do this. I can't make that. It's not me. I can't do it." I said, "Okay, we'll invent somebody else to make it." I said, what do you mean? Well, go. You've got a day. You've got half an hour. You've got, the rest of the afternoon. Let somebody else make that. You go and make it with your hands, and let somebody else make it with their head. And they come back with something going, "Oh."
Is there something about that in terms of, and it's something definitely dealt with in Jerusalem, the satisfaction of prose writing is you can write someone who can write that symphony. And you can write someone who can create that incredible model, and you can write, and therefore then you are still placing in people's mind. They're imagining it for themselves, but you have created that person who you may not feel you can be.
Well, weirdly, I find that when you're creating characters who are more intelligent than you are is actually surprisingly easy. It's sort of, and it stretches you to have to think from a perspective that is beyond your own. In fact, it's more difficult, I find, to write somebody who isn't as intelligent as you are, because you'll probably end up being patronizing or something like that. It's a more difficult thing to actually try and restrict your consciousness for a character that isn't as smart as you.
Don't believe it. Your demons are wonderful.
Thank you.
It's so fucking human. You know, that's what's so great. You met them in the pub. That's what. I've never met a demon I've met in the pub before. I'm sorry. They are.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
I don't need to contradict, but, you know, they're wonderful.
Eddie wondered, what is the difference between creative thinking, which he does every day, and imagination? It might just be semantics. I'm not sure. Alan? It
sounds semantic to me. Creative thinking is done using the imagination. I don't know whether there is a difference or a boundary line between those two things. I wouldn't care to draw it.
Brian, have you got any thoughts on that?
Make something. Creative thinking, imagination is not the interesting point. Make something from it and see what happens.
We've also another question, which is, which of Alan's work is your favourite, Brian? We've talked about Jerusalem quite a lot this evening.
Oh, it is Jerusalem. Yeah. But I'll have to explain, because of my severe chronic dyslexia, I have a unique way of reading it. So I have the audio version and the book, and I go from one to the other, which takes 10 times as long, but it gets me there.
Anyone watching this who's not read Jerusalem yet, I would advise you to get the 3-volume set rather than the 1-volume set, because I think when people see, I remember we talked about that, when people see the size of Jerusalem and the smallness of print, it is overwhelming. But when you go, it's okay, it's 3 books.
Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had people complaining that it was damaging their wrists and their eyes. And we had to explain that it was, we were kind of trying to balance it between eye damage and wrist damage, you know, but we can't always get it right.
That's the same thing happened with girls, of course. That's a very dangerous statement between eye damage and wrist damage, but we won't do it.
Let's see, does it, this again, I'm not sure who this is from. Does your imagination work more visually or is it more abstract? Brian?
Visually, entirely.
And do you, when that's happening, how much are you thinking about the ability to translate what is in your head? Because I always think that's the interesting thing, is that bit of how much you think you can pass on of what you can very specifically see in your kind of skull cinema, and then what's going to go into the skull cinema of the person reading your work.
Skull cinema, I love that. When it occurs, I'm not aware of any of that. It's just, and then in the morning I kind of have to make some sense. So, I mean, when you get down to the shop floor, be it a workbench or a computer or, you know, something else, that's when you have to make it sensible. Up to that point, it's all fighting. It's all enjoying itself.
Alan, what about you?
I've forgotten the question.
The question was, Well, I mean, thinking in particular, we were talking about lengthy books and when they're being written, trying to remember a thing. You know, with Jerusalem, I remember at times thinking, because you have incredible recall, I'd get to a point and go, oh God, now I've got to find what 500 pages before was the last time I met this person. That bit of thinking about the image which you are now projecting into other people's.
Yes, visual image. Now, I suppose that for me, I think that it's initially a verbal idea. I'll think of an arrangement of words, and that will almost simultaneously create the image to go with them. This is something to do with having spent most of my career working for the comics medium, where everything has to have a clearly defined image to go with it. Otherwise, there'll be nothing on the page. So I would be thinking of each little cluster of dialogue. Okay, what is the best visual to accompany this? Which has been very helpful with actually my prose writing, because if you're having to explain to an artist what to draw, you've got to be very clear and precise. So, yeah, that has helped. But I think that the initial impetus is probably still verbal. When I was working upon the prelude to the new series of novels that I'm doing with Bloomsbury, I was just writing notes, and then I suddenly wrote a practice sentence, which wasn't the beginning of the book, but I knew it was a beginning of the book, much like with Brian's opening scene in the Vorrh, that I thought, oh, this is good. This is a good sentence, and I could sort of build this up into something. It doesn't go right at the beginning, because I thought that that would have made it seem like a different book to the book that I intended, but it's there early on. But the initial thing was a collection of words and ideas, and then the visuals filled themselves in after that. But it's almost simultaneous.
This is interesting.
Now, sorry, yes, Brian.
No, because this is like, in a kind of way, it explains something I didn't understand. It's almost a reverse of the way we work.
Yeah, you start with the image.
Yeah, but also, as I'm convinced the more I write fiction, actual memory is erased by it.
That's possible. That's possible. Memory is a whole different class of fiction, isn't it?
But you have an encyclopedic memory which you can call on. I can't do that. I've erased it as I've gone down the track.
I suppose that, I mean, my memory is nowhere near as good as it was, in that I just forgot what the last question was halfway through.
About encyclopedic memory, not.
Yeah, but I have got quite a sticky memory for things that I'm interested. It's just a huge warehouse full of pointless facts until they become not pointless anymore.
They're not pointless, they're important. And I've heard you talking about many subjects on this way, and you just pull them out the air. I don't have that. That's really interesting. I don't have that. I can't. They've all been erased. As I go down the track, they've been kind of burnt behind me.
Well, actually, a lot of my memories of my actual life. Yeah, I remember lots of things that I've read and lots of things that I've seen and stuff like that. Yeah. My memories from my actual life, I see photographs from me as a young man, and I have no memory of being that person. It's it's a parallel life I have.
So that we share.
Yeah, so we've still got this huge load of gaps and blanks in our personal narrative. It's which I suppose is good, because then you can fill them in I mean, which was basically what a lot of the whole thing with Jerusalem was. You know, it was sort of, you know, just it was filling in things about the strange accident that had happened to my brother.
Yeah,
you know, and but I thought, okay, this is something inexplicable. Nobody knows what happened during that 10 minutes when they were trying to get him to the hospital. So that gives me an infinite space to fill with whatever I want, you know.
And in deep intensity.
Yes. It's sort of, yeah. I mean, because fantasy is probably always in some way about the real world. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. If you got something that was completely disconnected, it wouldn't work at all.
Frustratingly, we've run out of time, and I don't think I've ever done an event with so many questions about magic and the nature of spelling and psychedelics and many other things. So I will also say, go onto YouTube, which there's a fantastic interview with Brian. Is it called the immateriality of matter? I think there's a couple of long interviews.
But there's also the BBC Arena one.
We'll look up see what you can
better. You know, no, they're both good, but you know, they have different.
We'll go and have a look if you can, because there's stuff you've been asking will be answered, and also with Alan, obviously, there's a lot of stuff up there. And I will say that Voice of the Fire, I think, came out, was it last year or the year before? 25th anniversary edition.
Yeah.
With your first
last year.
Prose novel. So that is out now. Brian's novel Hollow, and obviously the Vorrh trilogy as well. Thank you very much for joining us again. I do apologize, there's so many questions, but now I would spend the rest of the evening going on an adventure with these two people, because there are so many things out there, and many of your questions will be answered. In fact, it's not really an evening, it's the rest of your week. Ring up sick to work now and deal with the more important nature of your imagination and these humans' imagination as well. Thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye.
Thank you.